Strangers on a train. Hey, buddy, how about you and me swap murders? Thus, we won't have murders we won't have motives for the murders we committed, and the police will never be able to catch us. That's the premise for Patricia Highsmith's 1950 novel Strangers on a Train, which was made into a movie by Alfred Hitchcock the next year. So yes, Guy meets Bruno on a train. Guy has a estranged wife who's making a lot of trouble for him and won't let him. Seems to be is going to derail his budding architectural budding career as an architect, and his relationship with Anne, the woman who's basically kind of brought joy into his life and got him on the straight and narrow and has actually made him the success he is. And Guy meets Bruno. Bruno, who's a playboy who doesn't have much use for women and is very attached to his mother. Thus, in the parlance of the day, he is a gay man. But of course, we're never going to actually mention that in this novel, not explicitly. Who has a father who is basically won't give him the money that he wants, and won't let him drink himself to death, and Bruno basically says, like, I just want him. He's gotten old enough that he should get his money, but his father is probably self-protectively withheld that money from him, and says, like, yeah, I want my father dead. You want your estranged wife dead. Let's swap murders. And Guy's like, yeah, no thanks, and but very kind of half-heartedly, like, oh, that actually might be a good idea, but no, of course not. No, I wouldn't want that done. Well, Bruno says, aha, well, I'm going to do it. And so he does. And then the rest of the novel is sort of, will Guy kind of cave under the pressure? Because the big thing is, when Bruno kills his wife, his wife Miriam, he doesn't say anything to the police about it. His inaction becomes his own complicity in the murder. And thus he finds himself trapped in basically another blackmail thing. He was getting sort of blackmailed by his estranged wife. Now he's getting blackmailed by Bruno. Bruno, whose constant refrain is, "I really like you, Guy," and who is definitely a dangerous fellow. Unfortunately, he's one of the things about this book is that the actual premise of, like, okay, you were two strangers, so we meet briefly, we go off and we commit murders, but Bruno is so obsessed with Guy that he basically spoils his own plan by getting obsessed with Guy, inserting himself into Guy's life so that they're no longer strangers. It's like Bruno is this very obvious guy who keeps on hanging out, keeps on intruding into Guy's life, and so it's one of these things where it spoils the plan. It's very interesting to look at this book versus the movie. The movie is much more the plot. It's this premise, and it's all about how Guy is going to kind of wriggle free of this psychopath. Where the book is much more about character. It's much more about delving into these two fellows. It's written very elegantly, very much from the close third person point of view, from the point of view of Guy and of Bruno, showing their world and just all the very kind of clipped descriptions, which I really found quite captivating that way. It's interesting book, and it's written in the 1950s, so it's like, is all the all the kind of Bruno's sexuality supposed to be just subtext, which you wouldn't really pick up with, because it seems blaringly obvious that, wow, yeah, Bruno is totally obsessed, totally in love with Guy, and that Guy is, it's the kind of there's a way of reading the book as like, oh, this is like, oh my God, a gay man is coming for me and is going to pull me into this world. And indeed, throughout the book, Guy gets more and more enmeshed in with Bruno, and it never becomes like a physical relationship or anything like that. But there's definitely this sense of him replacing Miriam in the story, and wanting to push out Anne as well. and for them to be this happy couple. So yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting that way of Patricia Highsmith was a woman who primarily she had relationships with only with other women. Patricia, yeah, she was a woman. She primarily had relationships solely with other women, and actually was in counseling for to try and regulate her sexuality, as the Wikipedia article says, i.e., to only like people, only be attracted to people of the same sex, opposite sex. To be, in the parlance of the psychology at the time, it's like, of being gay, being abnormal. Oh, you want to be normal. It's like, so, but that didn't happen, and she soon got out of that. But you wonder, the book, is it a comment on homophobia, or is it kind of a manifestation of homophobia, in the sense of, oh my God, the straight man, and if you talk to a stranger on the train, that this might kind of suck you into this horrible, sordid life, like, that the true horror, the true terribleness here isn't so much the murder as it is getting sucked into Bruno's life and becoming a partner of Bruno's. It's a thought. It's one of the other things with this book, is that it suffers a little bit from the George R. R. Martin problem for me, which is the whole Game of Thrones, the big sprawling epic fantasy books, versus the HBO series, which is tightly plotted and clips along and cuts out all the boring stuff and compresses it down. I mean, the book and the movie are very, very different, and I'll probably talk about at the end how different they are. Really different they are. There's many things of like, guy's an architect in the book, whereas in the movie he's a tennis player, and just Bruno's not this alcoholic falling down kind of mess. In the movie, he's much more of a plot threat, whereas in the book he's much more of an existential threat in a way. And there's less of a question of them getting away with the crime in a way, just because he is such a mess. But I have no idea even where I was going there. But yes, just that they're. I have no idea where I was going there. Okay, I'm just going to go on to my next thing, which is there's sort of a bit of a pacing thing at the beginning. I found it actually picked up more once we got to the actual murders. There's also a thing of just sort of a disdain for the mundane. I don't know if that was Highsmith or just the character she's looking through, but it feels like everybody is a dullard or a whiner, or I just wanted Guy and Bruno to just start murdering people, just because it was so it was so kind of tediously sordid at the beginning. And I do think a lot of that was sort of the character viewpoint, though I do think there's also another thing of just how Highsmith kind of views everyday world and kind of moral bankruptcy, maybe of the time, but also just of humankind, of the moral degeneration of humankind. There's a lot of this book is about how there's good and evil, and it seems like there's a lot more evil, or a lot of people are just sort of indifferently in the middle, and their inaction basically stains them as being pretty damned, all told. I'll let me know. The book is much more about this kind of moral quandary, than it's about the plot. It's much more about how Guy and Bruno combine at the end, do become a couple. Yeah. So I'm going to do a little spoiler thing here. Spoiler. So in the movie, Guy doesn't kill Bruno's dad. There's just sort of this. It's a complicated, well plotted out thing where it ends with Bruno getting his just desserts, and Guy having the happy ending with Anne and stuff like that, and yet the Hollywood ending, and versus the book where Guy outright kills Bruno's dad. He caves. He gets turned. He gets turned by Bruno in a sense, which is you wonder that's where I kind of do wonder if this is a metaphor for turning the straight guy gay, in this kind of a homophobic or kind of horror-ish kind of way. Which I don't know if I don't know if I'd really bought him killing someone without a motive, because that's the big flaw in Bruno's thing of swapping for a murder that you don't have a motive for. You can believe someone in the heat of passion killing someone, but for a regular person who's not a sociopath, or a psychopath like Bruno, I think there have to be some reason. Like, there's points where he's talking to Miriam. I could see him wanting to, in the heat of passion, do violence to Miriam, but if feeling trapped or something like that. But something where you're coming to a place and you're breaking in and you're going into a room and you're actually killing someone, I don't know if I bought. But that comes down to the kind of the philosophy, the philosophy, the kind of the world view that Patricia Highsmith seems to put forward here, of like that we both hold this good and evil within us. At some point, Charles, I think, says about his mother, he says, like, people are intrinsically good and the evil comes from outside, whereas he starts coming to the viewpoint that we know we hold both good and evil in equal measure, like all the good and all the evil within us. And it seems like most people are, just through their indifference, allow that evil to just sort of, just because it's convenient to run rampant. And so it's a very dark book that way. And in the end, Bruno doesn't get his just desserts. Bruno just drowns, a drunkard who falls off a boat. So in some ways, the one person who was trying to save him, his father, is the one person that he had killed. And he gets sort of the easy out. And Guy is so tied to him at this point that he actually jumps overboard to try and save him, which is like, you're thinking, it's like, that's insane. You want this guy to die, in a way of, you want to let him, but now that they're so joined, they're so married together, that Guy can't let him go. And it's only involuntarily through the death. And in the end, Guy doesn't have a happy ending, because he's killed someone. He actually goes to confess to who he thinks he's probably hurt the most from Miriam getting killed by Bruno. But it's like the guy's like, she was cheating, so I guess she deserved it. And it's like it was a meaningless confession. Though in the end, it turns out that a smug detective who's just looking out for his own career and his own ego boost was there all along to kind of capture Guy, and Guy's just like, okay, take me. And it's just like, that's the fizzle out of the book. Well, it's not a fizzle out of the book, but it's the strong statement of the book of just like, this is a world where there is no shining. Plato gets lost. I talked about Guy losing his book of Plato. Well, that book gets lost, and even when it gets found, it probably just gets tossed into an evidence locker to never be used, because there's no higher ideals here. There's no kind of perfect world just out of reach. This is a world full of good and evil in equal measure, and it's mostly, it seems like, through people's inactions as moral creatures. It's mostly just good. It's the evil is gonna ride triumphant. So, on that happy note, I'm looking forward to going off to the Readers podcast, where Simon Savidge and Thomas, who I forgot to write down your last name, Thomas, are going to do a discussion on this book, which is probably going to be way more entertaining than this. So I will leave a link down below to the Readers podcast, and probably to Simon Savage's Booktube page, where he'll probably have many sparkling thoughts about this and other things. So yes, that's my review of Strangers on a Train. More videos later.